Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Club Grubbery. And we are graced by Senator Ron Johnson, Republican Senator for Wisconsin in the USA. And great to have you with us. Thanks for joining us, Senator.
Thanks for having me on again.
It's great to have you on again, and we have been watching with interest a lot of YouTube clips with you in the committee hearings, discussing the warning data and the VAERS system. And it would appear that that system has been compromised. The information you presented was that there were clear signals, warning signals at the very beginning of this whole drama that were ignored for some reason. What can you tell us?
Sure. This is a bombshell revelation. I mean, this is a blockbuster that the mainstream media here in America, the legacy media, is radio silent on. They've completely covered it up. I actually was scheduled to go on CNN last week in the afternoon, sent them my report, and they canceled the hit. So let me describe in reasonably good detail, but still summary fashion. This is all the result of Bobby Kennedy's commitment to radical transparency. We were not getting cooperation of people inside the agency, so he finally said, no, just give them the information. So we got an 11 million page data dump. And I got to give my staff all the credit in the world for picking these needles out of the haystack. But what they uncovered, and here's the story. On March 1st of 2021, this is less than 3 months after the Pfizer and Moderna had been given emergency use authorization. They were starting to be administered primarily to elderly. March 1st, Peter Marks, the head of the division, CBER, that approves vaccines and also does the safety surveillance to make sure that what they've given authorization for, that there's not any safety signals appearing. He was briefed by the data specialist, the data mining specialist within FDA, who was working with the inventor of the algorithm that analyzed VAERS data. Now, the reason they need a sophisticated algorithm is because normally you've got, on average, about 280 deaths per year reported to VAERS associated with some kind of vaccines. That's kind of the background rate. People have anaphylactic shock. That's just, that's part of the risk-benefit ratio, right? Well, in 2021, we have sent over 21,000 reported worldwide. But when you look at a pretty low background rate, you need a pretty sophisticated algorithm to pick up slight little safety signals, right? So he was warned, he was briefed on March 1st that current algorithm was going to hide or mask safety signals, primarily because you had two different injections, Moderna and Pfizer. They were very similar. And when you compared Pfizer against Moderna and all their vaccines, you're going to mask the signals. When you've compared Moderna to Pfizer and all their vaccines, is going to mask it. It's kind of pretty obvious, okay? So he was warned that current algorithm that they're using to analyze VAERS was going to hide safety signals. 26 days later, that same data mining specialist working with the inventor of the algorithm came up with a state-of-the-art algorithm and did a run that they presented to senior FDA officials that showed 49 cases of extreme masking, extreme hiding in the old system. And this one revealed 25 adverse events, including sudden cardiac death, pulmonary infarction, Bell's palsy, different forms of stroke. For 3 months after that, they continued to do these runs. They kept providing more data of more safety signals of things like different types of sudden death. And instead of pinning a medal on their chest going, thank you for bringing this to our attention so we could warn the American public, the global public, they shunted them off to the side. They told them, we didn't ask for this data. We don't want this data. We're going to use the old algorithm. I know you told us it's going to mask safety signals, but in their mind, they had to be saying, which is exactly what we want, because we've got to hide these thousands and thousands of deaths that are appearing on VAERS. Back then in March, April, there were a few thousand. By the way, back then, I confronted Francis Collins, head of NIH. Yeah. This was end of April 2021, in person with some other Republican senators. Said, are you watching VAERS? There are about 2,900 deaths reported on VAERS right now. And at that time, 46%, because we were doing this to elderly, more feeble individuals, 46% of those deaths were occurring on the day of vaccination or within 1 or 2 days. And Francis Collins looked at me and said, well, Senator, we've attributed 6 deaths to the Johnson & Johnson vaccine with women of childbearing age. So 6. In terms of the other deaths, Senator, people die. People die. So anyway, they were warned that their algorithm is going to mask safety signals. They chose to stick with that algorithm, even though they were showing a new algorithm showing safety signals on sudden death, strokes, all kinds of serious stuff. And they hit it. Now, what makes this even sicker, in March of 2021, that same month where they were first warned about this, NIH was already treating people that they were diagnosing having been injured by the vaccine. In the end, they treated about 23 individuals, somewhat successfully, no total cures, but relieving of symptoms. They told those 23 injection-injured individuals, don't say anything to anybody. We want to make sure we collect all the data. We don't want to mislead anybody. We don't want to give them, the wrong type of treatment. So stay silent. When we got all our data and we finished our study here, we'll release the report. We'll acknowledge these injuries so that other doctors can acknowledge them and we can treat all these people that are on your support groups. They never published the study. To this day, they've not acknowledged these serious adverse events. They continue to cling to the fact that the injections were safe and effective and that what adverse events, which they don't deny, but what those adverse events are generally rare and mild. That is their mantra to this day. Now, Peter Marks, of course, has moved on to Eli Lilly, making, I'm sure, millions at that drug company. But let me underscore this, because I want people really thinking about this. The other thing we're looking right now for FDA to provide us is all the data on the 96 autopsies that FDA reviewed on children deaths. On 10 of them, there's just no doubt that the injection caused those child deaths. Now, we're starting to get information, but we're trying to get all the data on that. Think of being a parent of one of those children who, in the news, we already realize if you're a young child, you had virtually zero chance of having a serious problem getting COVID. But you've got the President of the United States saying that this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Get vaccinated so you don't kill your grandma. So these parents, maybe they're a little leery of an experimental injection or gene therapy, but they listen to Peter Marks saying, no, this is safe and effective. What adverse events are rare, they're generally mild, and let's face it, guys, don't kill grandma. And so they decided to get their child injected, and now we know 10 of them absolutely died from that injection. Now, that's just the tip of the iceberg. In total, worldwide, according to VAERS, 39,000 deaths are reported worldwide on VAERS associated with the COVID injection. 24% of those deaths occur on the day of vaccination within 1 or 2 days, almost a quarter. And we know from a CDC commission study at Harvard, the Pilgrim study, that in general, only 1% of adverse events are reported to VAERS. So VAERS dramatically understates, and I realize VAERS doesn't prove causation, but dying within a day or two of your injection, I know how I would feel about a loved one who got an injection, perfectly healthy and died the next day. I know exactly what would cause that. Yeah. But if you multiply that 39,000 by a factor of 100, if it's only 1%, that's potentially 3.9 million people worldwide. Again, I'm not claiming that. I'm not saying that. I've already been, false PolitiFact check that I said 3.9 million died. No, I'm just laying out the underreporting factor here. 39,000 people dying of the COVID injection is probably a dramatic understatement. And again, this is all in light of the fact that so many of these people died taking the injection well after the time that Peter Marks, the head of the division that approves vaccines and is supposed to surveil their safety, knew that their system was going to mask safety signals. A new system unmasked that, showed safety signals on things like sudden death, stroke. This is evil. What has happened is evil, and what's even compounding it now This is being covered up in the mainstream media. I'm going on shows like this. I'm going on, cable news, that type of thing. Fox, to its credit, has had me on for both Fox Business and main Fox, Maria Bartiromo. I was on WABC radio, but not CBS, NBC, ABC. Again, I mentioned CNN invited me on. I told them what I want to talk about. They disinvited me. This is I can't think of a more major scandal having to do with our federal health agencies than this one, and it's radio silence here in America.
Senator, it's global. It's global. It's not just America. What we're going through. John.
Well, I think that's the point here, isn't it? Because the Australians are obviously relying on data and signals from the US. So this is filtered here by default. Our TGA only recognises, Senator, that I think about 15 people died from the COVID vaccinations, despite the fact that 1,000 people were reported to have died from it, but they don't recognise those. Senator Malcolm Roberts here in Australia said that 30,000 people have likely died from these vaccines in the last 24 hours, but he was labelled grotesque. We happen to be interviewing Dr. Philip Altman, who is a highly regarded expert here in Australia, and he said, yeah, well, Malcolm Roberts is probably wrong. It's probably in excess of 100,000. So, I mean, these people are making Adolf Hitler look like a Boy Scout, aren't they?
Well, understand what we're up against. We're up against the entire medical establishment, virtually, that pushed this on their patients. We're up against the federal health agencies that approved conditionally and then full licensure of these things. We're up against politicians who made videos, asking their constituents, get jabbed, end the pandemic. We're up against the former president of the United States who threaten people. We're losing our patience with you unvaccinated folks. You're driving this pandemic. They wouldn't listen to some of the vaccinologists and epidemiologists who warned that the stupidest thing you can do in the midst of a pandemic is mass vaccination. You would drive mutations. You would drive variants. Is that what happened? I mean, if you look at and I've got a great chart that shows number of new cases daily. That topped out in December of 2020 and January 2021. By March, April, that was way down. So the pandemic was diminishing. It was petering out. And then the vaccine came on stream, and as the uptake of the vaccine, and by the way, it has such a low uptake that you can't credit the vaccine would bring those number of new cases per day down. But as the vaccine uptake increased, all of a sudden, here comes Delta variant. And the next year, Omicron. And the pandemic dragged on for a couple of years. Probably if we never would have vaccinated, well, I can't say this. I mean, it's just a theory. But it sure looks from that chart of new cases that this pandemic was pretty well, like I say, petering out in 2021. In the end, it didn't. And the vaccine sure didn't prevent it or didn't cause it to end.
Senator, are you getting much support from within your own party over there with with these revelations, or are you finding reticence amongst your own group?
I mean, nobody knows about it. I held this hearing. Now I'm talking to Republican senators at lunch. They hadn't heard about the hearing. They hadn't heard about my report. They're shocked at the revelation. The ones I'm talking about. I probably need to do a conference-wide presentation on this if they'll listen to me. But most senators on a bipartisan basis are like the rest of the American public. They're in a state of denial. Even people that got the injection that might have a serious. I know people who seems to me that they're injection injured. They call it long COVID. They don't want to associate their vaccine injury with the vaccine because it was a decision they made. So they don't want to admit they're wrong. They certainly don't want to hear evidence of DNA contamination, about turbo cancers, about myocarditis. I mean, that sticks with you. I mean, that's permanent damage to the heart. Okay, it shortens lifespan. They don't want to hear about that stuff. So we literally have probably a global state of denial right now. Most people want to forget the pandemic ever happened. They want to forget they got the injection. They just want to move on their lives. And I have a hard time blaming them, but we have to blame and we have to hold these people, and it's evil people who had the information, had a duty and responsibility to tell the American people, the global population, what they knew. And not only did they not tell them, they lied bold-faced to the world.
Senator, I think Nicholas Hulscher summed it up pretty well the other day. He indicated about Fauci in relation to the gain of function stuff in Wuhan, the subsequent global pandemic. Then we had the suppression of early treatment protocols such as ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. Then we had the hospital protocols such as remdesivir and people being put on ventilators that were killing them. And then we had the experimental mRNA vaccines, which are a complete humanitarian disaster, probably the worst in living history, on the background of mandatory vaccines. Yourself, Senator Rand Paul, I mean, you're uncovering all these crooks in the Senate in America. I mean, what's next? How do we pursue these people for what they've done?
So even though I've been doing this oversight, writing oversight letters for years, I'll use an example that, we have one indictment for Dr. David Morans. The only reason we have that indictment was because my staff pulled a needle out of a haystack out of a 115,000 page production, not from HHS. We got nothing from the Biden HHS, even though I wrote them some like 60 letters, some associated with COVID in some way, shape, or form. But we also requested information from universities. So we got 115,000 pages of documents from a university in Texas. And my staff pulled that one email where David Morans is talking about he has a FOIA lady, Freedom of Information Act lady, who has showed him how to make emails disappear. And if you've got something sensitive, send it to my Gmail. That's a clear violation of the Federal Records Act, destruction of federal records, which is charged with conspiracy. But that's just one person. Now, we finally got these documents out of Bobby Kennedy late last year. So now we have the people who wrote these things. Again, we see also evidence of them evading FOIA. Talking about it. Say, well, FDA stopped sending us these their data reports because they know about the FOIA requests coming in here. This is pretty sensitive, so let's talk offline. Probably shouldn't be including this in an email. So, I mean, they're fully aware of this. So it's remarkable that we found as many incriminating emails as we found. But now we know who wrote them. We know who was CC'd on them. We know who attended these meetings when they were briefed. We've got the briefing papers. So our next step now is to start interviewing people. And, we interview them under oath. And they need to be very careful that they don't lie to us under oath. This will be a very serious investigation. Now, it's going to take some time. I'm sure these people will lawyer up. I'll probably have to issue subpoenas. They'll probably plead the fifth. But a challenge is going to be that federal government does a really good job of protecting itself against lawsuits. It does a really good job of protecting people that do its bidding. They're the federal employees against lawsuits. But when there's fraud involved and a fraud that is so massive that resulted in such death and destruction, again, because this isn't being covered by the mainstream media, there's not a level of outrage in America yet as there should be. I mean, there should be an upswell of outrage. In America, a Rasmussen poll showed about 24% of Americans believe they know somebody who died from the COVID injection. Quarter of the American population. So they are going to completely believe this story if it's ever told to them. And right now it's not being told to them. I'm doing as many interviews as I possibly can to get the word out, but until the mainstream media picks this up and covers it as the major news story that it is, the blockbuster revelation that it is, we're just not going to get the appropriate level of outrage by the American public.
Well, we'll be sending this interview to several Australian outlets to see what kind of response we get from there. But I had a phone call yesterday from somebody who lost a loved one on the day they got the booster. And I said to them, were they vaccinated? Yeah, they got they had 4 or 5 shots. They had the booster the day they died. I said, do you think it might have been the vaccination? Oh, no, it's not the vaccination. The vaccination saved his life. I mean, this is what we're up against. It is absolutely bizarre. But my biggest problem is while all this protectionism is going on around these authorities, that there is a community of authentic doctors and scientists who are ready to jump into the breach and start finding cures, mechanisms to save people's lives from this. And they're being held back because people are protecting their butts. Now, that's pretty hard to come to terms with. How do you sleep at night when you know that this is going on? You must be frustrated to hell.
I mean, understand, I literally have reverence for doctors and nurses. My first child was born with a very serious congenital heart defect, transposition of the great artery. So at 8 months, of the first day of life, she was saved with a balloon septostomy, a catheterization of her heart by a skilled cardiologist. 8 months later, in a 7-hour surgery, they rebaffled the upper chamber of her heart. Okay, so I mean, they saved my daughter's life. She's 42 years old now. She's a nurse practitioner herself. She's writing music. She's just beautiful woman. Two grandchildren through surrogacy. So I love doctors and nurses. I cannot tell you how profoundly disturbing I found COVID when I saw so many doctors. And I understand this. They went to medical school. They got hundreds of thousands of dollars of student loans outstanding. They want to take care of their family. They want to remain doctors. They saw what happened to people like Peter McCulloch and Pierre Corey and other people whose careers were destroyed, whose licenses were, if not revoked, threatened to be revoked. It doesn't take very many people for a tyrant to hang in the public square before the rest of the population falls into line. So I've had a lot of doctors come up to me and quietly say, "Hey, thanks for doing what you're doing. I need to keep keep my head down." No, it's very sad what happened. So they wouldn't treat patients. They wouldn't prescribe ivermectin, and some of these other things. They just wouldn't do it. I mean, remdesivir, pump that into our patients' veins. Hope it doesn't knock out the kidney, or if it does, I guess the hospital is going to make more money on dialysis. I mean, it's a sick system.
Senator, one of the other great areas that you're doing fantastic work in is the removal of the liability shields for these vaccine makers. Can you give the audience a bit of an update on where that's going?
That's a tall order. I mean, we can propose legislation, you can co-sponsor it, but the COVID cartel, the pro-vaccine lobby is unbelievably strong. And by the way, if you haven't heard of it, if you haven't read it, anybody listening to this thing, read Aaron Siri's Vaccines Amen. It's sort of the seminal book. I mean, you can read Dissolving Illusions, you can read Turtles All the Way Down, you can read Peter McCulloch's Vaccines, Mythology, Ideology, Reality. Aaron Siri is an attorney, who has to prove his case in court. So he needs facts. He can't rely on his reputation. Just has all the facts to open anybody's eyes in terms of how grossly underpowered these studies are on childhood vaccines. Proves the case that not one vaccine on childhood schedule in America has ever been tested against a true placebo. It shows how pitiful the number of days are that these vaccines, that they actually follow children in their safety studies. I mean, people will be shocked based on the lies that the pro-vaccine crowd, the Vaccine Amen crowd has been preaching to them very effectively for decades.
Yeah, we've had Aaron Siri on the program. It was enlightening. I sat through 9 hours of the deposition he did with Stanley Plotkin. I thought I was watching.
So have I, by the way. That's brilliant.
It is absolutely brilliant. I love the way he leads him up to that last hour of the deposition where he exposed everything. I mean, that was like watching Nuremberg for me. That was just incredible. And yet this information is still not getting out there. We're struggling over here to break out of the bubble that we find ourselves in. We are having a little success here and there. We are seeing mainstream journalists starting to crack and starting to think that there's something wrong. But those that we talk to try and promote the story are saying, if we run with this story, we're going to get trodden on from above. And speaking of being trodden on from above, do you think in your heart of hearts, if President Trump were to see what you've been talking to us about, that he would react, and how do you think he would?
Well, I've shown him my failures chart in person, and he looks at it, looks up to me and say, even Democrats say it saved 100 million lives. So, he's pretty proud of Operation Warp Speed. He wants to believe that and by the way, the COVID injection might have saved some lives. I don't deny that, but we don't know. One thing I've dispelled the myth, and we can send you these charts if you want me to after this. But there was in one of our hearings, my ranking member, Senator Blumenthal, trotted out this Commonwealth Fund study, this mathematical model, claiming that the injection saved 3.2 million lives in America in 2021 and 2022. Okay, so remember that. It's easy to do with charts, but it's easy to do with numbers. So remember that, 3.2 million lives. 2019, the year before the pandemic, in America, we had 2.8 million deaths, okay? The year of the pandemic, we had 3.4 million deaths. So it was actually 2.85. So it was about 500,000 additional deaths from what would be normally, right? You would think if the vaccine were effective, the next year we'd be less than 3.4 million, right? We'd return more to that norm of about 2.8, 2.9 million. No, we went to 3.5 million. The next year in 2022, we came down to 3.3, but it's still above what the normal rate, which would be slightly growing because we're aging and our population is growing. By about 2024, we'd be about 3 million deaths. So we went from 2.85 to 3.4, 3.5, and then 3.3. And again, the two relevant years according to the study was 2021, 2022. So those are the actual deaths. If you were going to make the claim that you saved 3.2 million deaths, you'd have to assume that the first 2 years of vaccine, we were going to have 5 million deaths. Go from 2.5 million to 3.4 in the year of an unvaccinated pandemic, and then assume we're going to go to 5 million in 2021, it's total BS. It's so easy to disprove that. But again, you just have a group, we got the study, the COVID cartel, as I call them, they glom onto that and they preach that and people believe it. Just like, people claim that vaccines have saved 150 million lives worldwide. If you read Aaron Series' book on page 84, he's got a great chart. And on that chart, he goes through all the childhood illnesses that we vaccinate against. And he lists the number of deaths in America the year before the vaccine was available. In America, they claim the vaccines have saved over 1 million lives, okay? The total number of deaths per year of all those childhood vaccines the year before the vaccines is less than 5,000. So how can over, even decades, how can you claim you're saving 1 million lives when you only lost 5,000 lives total of those childhood? And by the way, this dates back to the 40s and 50s. We've gotten better at curing disease. We really have. Medical science has advanced. It's also done some really terrible things.
Mm. Senator, there seems to be another looming crisis that the mainstream media are grabbing hold of. A cruise ship somewhere out in the ocean has had a couple of people die on there from hantavirus. They're really beating this up in Australia. They're bringing out the people in the suits and washing everyone down and all the fear stuff. Ironically, this same hantavirus appears in the Pfizer secondary side effect causes as well.
Yeah, well, so I would think that's probably unrelated to the vaccine. I mean, what we're now hearing is we know who case zero was. There's a biologist who's roaming around a dump with all kinds of rat feces. Okay, we do know that that's how generally it's generally not human to human unless you're very close to somebody who's really sick. Then you can spread it human to human, and it's looking like that's exactly what happened. Again, you got a cruise ship, you got closed circulatory system. But we also know that's not a new one. This isn't some new virus. This is the same virus that's been identified before. It's not some new species like the coronavirus that had the furon cleavage site that was inserted by somebody, probably the bat lady. Okay, so no, they're trying to use the same playbook. And quite honestly, and I got reamed, big time during the coronavirus when I accused Fauci of overhyping AIDS, just like he is overhyping the coronavirus. And now they're trying to do the same thing here. By the way, he definitely overhyped AIDS. He's out there saying, household transmission, and he wanted a vaccine for that. I mean, this is Anthony Fauci's playbook that still exists in global health.
Wow. I've reshared a video that I found from Dr. Zev Zelenko, which I think dates back to 2021, where he talked about hantavirus amongst a bunch of other respiratory illnesses. And he said, all we have to do is issue people with vitamin D3 and zinc, and we knock all this stuff on the head. Vitamin D3 and zinc. That's all we have to do. And that is an ageless video clip. I mean, it's just so profound in the way we look at things today.
Yeah, I read something that was pretty effective with hantavirus, but I mean, nasal sprays. I mean, I got reamed about talking about gargling. I mean, and anything within a respiratory violent that you can reduce that viral load in your upper respiratory tract is going to be good. You don't want to get into your lungs. Again, it's just common sense. I mean, it was common sense medicine before the coronavirus, and then they didn't want to use common sense because they didn't want to use cheap generic drugs. They wanted a platform for this mRNA injection. And you just go back to a Milken Institute panel that Fauci and Rick Bright were on, where they've both bemoaning the fact that we don't have a universal vaccination program in the US or globally. Flu just doesn't do it. As much as they try to push the unbelievably ineffective flu vaccine, I laid out the numbers. There's one year where the flu vaccine was supposedly 10% effective. It means it's completely ineffective, right? But they couldn't get a universal vaccine program with flu vaccination, so it was going to take a pandemic. 3 months later, they had their pandemic and they had their outlet for this mRNA platform that was never successful in what was targeted for initially cancer research because they couldn't control it. And then they lied to us that it was going to stay in our arm, biodistributed all over the body.
Yeah.
So no, I mean, Mike Eden did a great job of laying out all the lies of COVID early on. Those things still ring true today.
Senator, in Australia at the moment, we're really championing a cause that's been around for nearly 40 years. And I want to know what you know about it, because we know that this has troubled countries all around the world, such as the USA. And it's the tainted blood product scandal. Back in the 1980s, blood banks around the world were soliciting blood donations from gay men, and they knowingly distributed blood products to people around the world that were contaminated with HIV/AIDS, with Hep C and other diseases. They knew it was contaminated, yet they still put it out there. And at the moment, we're seeing tens of thousands of people affected in Australia. There have been for 40 years. There's been no compensation. And the way we're looking at it is we can't leave any wounded on the battlefield. If we can walk past the morality of leaving those people in such a state where you had pregnant mothers and their children dying of HIV/AIDS because of medical cover-ups, then the same thing is going to happen with us with the mRNA shots. So we have a cycle in Australia where we wait 50 years after a disaster and then we apologise for it. That by then all the people who suffered from it are dead, all the people who caused it are dead, and it falls hollow. Are you aware of situations like that in America? Have you guys been dealing with that in any way?
So my own personal story, remember I told you my daughter, who was born in 1983, right at the beginning of the AIDS crisis, where we didn't know a whole lot.
Yeah.
So my mom, she has Rh negative blood, so she's a very wanted donor. So she was very well known in the blood donation, plus working in their church. So prior to my daughter's surgery, her open heart surgery, we were concerned about the blood bank with AIDS spreading. Didn't know much about it. So my mom literally got from her church group 30 pints of blood donated for my daughter's surgery. Ended up my daughter did need a pint of blood. They didn't use any of those 30 pints. They just pulled one off the shelf.
Wow.
That shows you how as much as I love the doctors and nurses who saved my daughter, the medical establishment, the protocols are so cavalier. We talked about hospital protocols. I'm going to hold a hearing on those. Hopefully it'll feature attorney Ralph Larigo. I don't know if you've interviewed him or not, but this is an attorney who got called in by families whose loved ones were basically held captive in these hospitals, right? They were begging them, just please try ivermectin, try some of these things, Nope, won't do it. So they had to sue these hospitals. These are rough figures of, about 40 cases he won, 40 cases he lost. Of the 40 cases he won, one of those individuals was already too far gone, and one person died. Of the 40 cases he lost, they all died under the hospital protocols. So the freedoms we lost, inside the hospital, outside the hospital, were profound. And again, that's why we need a COVID reckoning. That's why I'm not giving up on this. This is why this information has to get through. People have to be aware of just the abuses, the corruption during COVID, the miserably failed response to COVID. They need to understand it so we can't let it happen again, because that playbook's there and they are just itching to use it. You can tell by this antivirus scare.
100%. Senator Hoody just mentioned the infected blood scandal in Australia, and it's obviously a massive overlooked crisis here. But just looking forward, what are your thoughts on organisations like the Red Cross globally going forward with the contamination of blood in relation to mRNA? I mean, we know the spike protein is hanging around, for a lot longer than these experts told us. And there's likely other issues as well that we don't even know about yet. How's that going to affect the delivery of blood products into the future, do you think?
It's going to be difficult. Blood products are, not the easiest to obtain already. Okay, it's not like we have a huge surplus of them. So you've got a very large percentage of the global population that got the mRNA injection, and so that's going to be probably something we're going to have to live with. Certainly, if you weren't COVID injected, you would like to think there could be an alternate, like my mom did.
Yeah.
Lily, but in an emergency situation, you don't have time to plan for that. If you've got a planned surgery, you can potentially try and protect yourself. If the blood banks would even cooperate with you, like I said, back in AIDS, I mean, this is a serious issue. This was not something that we did that was, like we were freaking out and we're paranoid about. This was this is my little daughter, a little 8-month-old daughter. I don't want her contaminated with AIDS, contaminated blood. And they just took one off the shelf. So it's a problem. I'm not hearing blood contamination in the U.S. because they don't want to talk about it. Just like FDA didn't want to talk about safety signals. Is it happening? Probably. It's just on nobody's radar screen.
Wow, it's incredible. What we're seeing out here in Australia once again is we had a pelvic mesh scandal, medical scandal. It was publicised. It was the biggest payout, I think, in history in Australia in a class action. And it turns out by the time the lawyers and all the other people with their fingers in the pie got a hold of the money, the survivors of the pelvic mesh scandal only got $4,000 each. I mean, we're just seeing this constant stream of medical malfeasance. And our biggest problem is, once again, and I don't know whether people are scared that they're going to be prosecuted or hung or whatever, that so many people are just not willing to say, hey, we screwed up. We've got to admit we screwed up, because what we've done is set in train a motion that's going to be, we're going to see the ripples of for eternity, basically. We're going to see these people falling over. We interviewed a wonderful analyst from the Philippines. She's an Australian expat, Sally Clark. And she has gone through all the databases and all the bureaus of statistics around the world, and she's just analysed their data and correlated that with vaccine rollout. And she has identified massive increases in death rates and a massive decrease in birth rates. She's identifying shrinking populations around the world. And this data is incredible. She was asked to present that data at an inquiry for the Philippines government, and halfway through presenting it, they shut the whole inquiry down. So it almost seems to someone like me that we're doomed to have to live with this stuff. But we're getting told day after day after day, why are you guys still talking about the mRNA shots? Why don't you move on? It's over. Why do you think we need to keep on about it?
Well, I mean, talk about the blood bank. So assume that you've got spike protein and possibly even the mRNA injection, the lipid nanoparticle, that may be in donated blood, right? If somebody gets that donated blood and then suffers a heart attack, they wouldn't attribute a heart attack to somebody who just got the injection, the full boat dose of it, right? They're certainly not going to correlate blood with the spike protein or the lipid nanoparticle with the mRNA in it, they're certainly not going to attribute some adverse event to somebody who got a blood transfusion. And there have people that have come forward. Okay, people do come forward. They get destroyed. That's the problem. Is the good people come forward, they tell the truth, and they get destroyed. They get vilified. They get ridiculed. They get mocked. The COVID cartel, the medical establishment, the federal and global health agencies, they know how to protect themselves, and they are powerful. I mean, they're the ones that have the money. They're the ones that have all the people in the places. I mean, you got the Bill Gates of the world, funding Gavi and all these World Health Organization. Again, we are up against powerful forces, and the only weapon we have is the truth. But we convey the truth, and we just get stomped on it, and they come up with a different explanation. Again, so what do I think long COVID is generally? I think it's probably injection injuries. But they've come up with COVID. Come up with long COVID. Now, does long COVID exist? Probably. Because when you got infected, you also got the spike protein. That was the nasty part of the coronavirus, the spike protein. And they designed an injection, a quasi-vaccine that turned the body into a manufacturing site of something that was toxic to it, like the spike protein. That's why a guy like Dr. Michael Yeadon worked for Pfizer for 30 years, was beside himself when he heard what his colleagues were doing. He could not believe they were designing an injection like that. Couldn't believe it.
Well, we're working with a former colleague of mine, an airline captain of many years, who has a massive vaccine injury as a result of the mRNA shots, and he has had 19 declarations that he has a vaccine injury by specialists, and one specialist said to him, "We can't believe it. Your body has become a spike protein factory. You are just churning this stuff out at a rate faster than we can protect you from it." And this is all being revealed. But what we're finding is a lot of these doctors, when we say to them, "Okay, you're prepared to come out and say that publicly?" No.
Nope.
No. And some of them are using the mantra, and it's fair enough to say that if we get deregistered, how are we going to help people in the future? We've got to stay under the radar. There's a lot of truth in that.
Well, it's massively true. It just is. And again, as I said, it doesn't take tyrants they don't have to hang very many people in the public square, brutalize them before people say, "Oh, I think I'll just keep my head down and keep me and my family safe."
Well, what you said about people being gaslit and made out that they're insane and everything. We're seeing that with the fellow championing the tainted blood products here in Australia, Charles McKenzie. There are people threatening to out him as being insane. I mean, he's been fighting this battle for nearly 40 years. He's lost everything. He's still persevering with it, and people are still gaslighting him the whole time. It's just reprehensible. But somebody's got to keep standing up, and that's what you're doing. So, John.
Well, I suppose, Senator, I mean, the main point of injury here is these vaccines, these mRNA products. I mean, do you see a day, a reckoning where Secretary Kennedy and the likes of yourself will have the ability to halt this?
Well, again, that's why I'm not. I've really just begun my investigation because we just now got documents. So now we'll start bringing people in for interviews. Those should be awful interesting, very revealing, and we'll find out exactly what these guys knew and when they knew it. Again, we haven't. I'm an accountant, okay? I'm not a trained investigator, but I've been investigating now for years. There's a process you go through, and what you first need is the documentary evidence. I always get call this guy in for an interview or testify before your hearing. It doesn't do any good. They know what they did wrong. They know what they hid. They know what we don't have. They can run circles around you. It's only once you have documentary evidence that takes you into a certain direction where you can ask pretty pointed questions. And how do you explain that? What did you mean by, what did you want to discuss that you couldn't discuss via email? What did you mean when, remember, the boss wants to really push these boosters? We can't create vaccine hesitancy. I mean, is that why you chose an algorithm that you were warned was going to hide these safety signals? And then you went out and you told the American people you didn't see, even though you were showing safety signals?
Man.
We got it right there. I mean, we got the emails, we have the dates, we see the. Are you going to literally tell us that, oh, you didn't read that email, even though you responded to it?
It's
So
a
no, I mean,
bombshell.
we've again, I don't want to give everything away here, but these will be some very interesting interviews. So we'll do those, issue a report based on those interviews. They'll probably bring people in to testify, make them take the fifth if that's the way they want to take it. But that'll, hopefully by that point in time, we will shame some of these, television networks, the main ones, to actually start covering this as the blockbuster story it is.
Mm-hmm.
Senator, you've been a successful CEO in a very successful company, and you made a foray into politics. And since coming into politics, you've been working really hard. We've got a lot of senators in Australia who don't even bother turning up at committee hearings, and we've got a handful that just turn up to every one and they work hard, and that's what you're doing. In the process, we've seen the Australian senators working hard become very cynical about everything they used to once hold true. And I watched you on Tucker Carlson just recently, and it would appear that you too are now starting to become cynical because you're there working in the engine room of all this, and you're seeing stuff that's having you scratch your head. Is that how you feel about the world at the moment? Are you cynical?
I'm not the world's greatest optimist. I'm not the most you know uplifting person. I'm looking at reality right now, and reality is not pleasant. Politically, we got the radical left destroying nations, trying to do it to America here. In terms of our medical establishment, I mean, again, I found it profoundly sad that the medical community that saved my daughter's life did this during COVID. And I've never been a big fan of Congress. This place is just a charade. It's literally sure. I mean, they call it the grace Senate, the grace deliberative body, and we use things like a 60-vote threshold to avoid accountability. So no, I'm not a fan of this place, but it has given me a platform, particularly as chairman, as this, first the full committee, but even better is the subcommittee on the permanent subcommittee investigation to pursue these truths, to expose them, to have the unilateral subpoena power. To certainly threaten people with granting subpoenas if they don't voluntarily provide us documents and stuff. So it's given me a platform to be able to expose the truth and hopefully make an impact. So again, you come from the private sector, you see excellence in the private sector, right? Because you have to be excellent to survive long term. You have to, whether it's a restaurant, the smallest little business, a restaurant, you have to be excellent if you're going to survive.
Yeah.
Here, failure generally helps grow an organization. I mean, failure grows government. The more they fail, the more they demand more resources and more power to fail in a bigger way, I guess. And that's what we've seen in America. That's what we've seen across the world. I mean, in America, our founders were geniuses. They understood that we're not angels, we're men and women. If we don't want to live in chaos and anarchy, you need some form of government. But boy, you've got to limit that government because government isn't your friend. Government is something to fear. One word definition of government is power. And as Lord Acton very appropriately pointed out, power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's what we see across government globally, is government is corrupt. Freedom is the essential ingredient. In America, government was primarily designed to guarantee our freedom, not trample on it. Not solve all our problems. And again, too many Americans, because we live in such an affluent society, and this is probably true in Australia and other places in the developed world, we've gotten so used to affluence and we've tolerated governments and almost credited them with our success. It's a perversion of reality. We succeed in spite of government, in spite of the taxation, in spite of the regulation and their freedom depriving actions. It's because the spirit of men and women is still strong. It's hard to stomp us out. So that's where I'm at. You still have geniuses. You still have the Elon Musk of the world dreaming big dreams. The Steve Jobs. Prior to that, Edisons and Firestones and Fords. I mean, you still have great men and women doing great things. And we just need to hope that truth, as Robert Malone has pointed out, is a lion. And it's our only weapon, and we have to believe it's going to be a lion and will hopefully keep us free.
Well, finally, John, I think we better let the senator go, but that's a perfect segue into the ASIO bill that we're facing.
Mm. Yeah, there's a bill in our Australian Parliament that's about essentially being able to take people in for investigation, interrogate them without even allowing them to have any defence. Our government is just out of control. The Prime Minister is playing it straight out of the Communist Handbook. A bloke that's never had a job in his life, and you wouldn't feed him. And this is what they're doing. They're just absolutely tearing Australia apart with these sorts of bills.
So they're going to pass a bill that will give our version of the CIA the power to come and apprehend you and arrest you. You're not allowed to have legal representation, and you won't be able to tell anybody that you've been apprehended by them. You've got to keep that a secret. I mean, is the hair standing up on the back of your neck, or is it just me?
Absolutely, and I'm keep thinking Magna Carta, Magna Carta. I mean, your government was bequeathed, has come down from the Magna Carta, a magnificent document. Is really the basis of American freedoms. Okay, I mean, what a departure. It's not. No, it's we the people have the power, not the king. And to have parliamentarians that apparently have never read the Magna Carta. Politicians in America, did you never not read the Declaration of Independence and then follow up the Constitution or the Federalist Papers? I mean, these are revered documents written by learned geniuses, okay? And again, we ignore them at our own peril. And unfortunately, our education systems continue to degrade here in America for sure. My guess globally, it's not in China though. Their education system is turning out really smart people, unfortunately, under a very awful governing system.
Yeah.
So again, no, we free people have to stick together, and we've got to cheerlead for each other. I was literally, it was depressing to see what was happening in Australia. As bad as it was in America, it was way worse in Australia and Canada. And listen, I worked for a British company for 10 years. I love the Brits.
Yeah.
I love the empire and the children of the empire.
Yeah.
I hope you get your act together. I hope we get our act together.
We're trying.
They seem to be pushing back in the UK at the very least. If word's correct, that it appears as though Keir Starmer's days are numbered. A terrible result for Labor in the UK, which hopefully filters down here to Australia, because our Prime Minister Albanese, he is the worst of the worst. Absolute disgrace.
Yeah, we've had
I hope our publics are patient enough, and they won't be. But they have to be patient. I mean, whether it's the new British government or a new Australian government, or the Trump administration and beyond, the leftists create such enormous messes. Spend what we don't, more than we take in. These enormous deficits, increase our debt. Open up our borders. I mean, these are enormous messes. You don't snap your fingers and in one election turn it all around. So it's going to require patience on the part of the public. But it's going to require a moral and educated public too.
Well, we're seeing a massive rise of a fresh kind of politics in Australia, and the major parties are doing everything they can to destroy it, both immorally and illegally. But it is rising nevertheless. So we're seeing this trend going through nations around the world, freedom-loving nations. How do you see the upcoming Senate elections going, the midterms?
It's going to be tough. By the way, I sprang out of the Tea Party. I still view myself more Tea Party than Republican. Okay. But no, it's going to be tough. I mean, I think President Trump had to do what he had to do with Iran. He had to act before we could no longer act. I mean, they wanted a nuclear weapon. That's why they put up with sanctions for 47 years. Okay, they want a nuclear weapon, and that's an existential threat to freedom-loving people. It just is. So he had to make a tough decision. Had known it wasn't going to be easy, and unfortunately, that decision, the Iranian people don't have guns, just like Australians. Okay, when the population is disarmed and the only people who have guns are the brutal dictators, you got a problem. So Iran's got a problem. So as much as President Trump hoped, I'm sure, by decimating their nuclear sites, their navy, their missiles, the population can't rise up against those brutes that are armed.
Yeah.
So this is going to take some time, and that's causing gas prices high, and Americans do not like high gas prices. That really impacts their pocketbook, and they're pretty surly, and they're blaming the president's Republican Party for that. So I'm not an optimist about the midterms. That being said, if he could succeed, as he succeeded in Venezuela, let's totally turn that narco-terrorist state into something we can do business with. The positive impact it'll have on global world peace and security, on our geopolitics. If we get rid of the Ayatollahs, that would be what an achievement. That might be what's required to save the midterms for Republicans.
It's going to be interesting times, but we're used to living in those. I think the work that you're doing, you're championing the cause of so many people around the world who are struggling to come to terms with vaccine injuries and the deception that's gone on. We want to champion you. So whatever we can do to spread your word, we will do that. We will make sure that this interview gets to our major politicians and media outlets, and we're going to keep pushing the barrow as far as we can. And we're happy to have you on air anytime you need to push something. Let us know, please. Grace is in touch with us, and please thank her from us. She's been amazing, and your staff are amazing. So we just want to champion your cause. We think it's worth championing. So we're here for you. And in that light, I want to pray for you before we let you go.
I'd appreciate that.
Dear Lord, Father in heaven, we thank you that you are revealing more and more light. But the people who are holding that lamp need to be supported and need to be protected, and they need to be uplifted. So, Lord, we pray that the work being done by Senator Johnson and his staff and those people feeding him with that information, and the people like Aaron Siri and Bobby Kennedy, Lord, we just pray that that work will be protected, will be promoted by you, and that we will all in this world see the light of truth, because we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Well, again, I appreciate the opportunity. I appreciate what you guys do. Tell the story. Tell the story. I mean, people need to understand what happened here, so it can never happen again. But God bless all of you. Take care.
God bless you too, Senator, and we'll chat soon, I'm sure. So John and I will be right back after the break. Thanks for joining us. Well, there you have it, John. That is a bombshell. We've done some great interviews. We have really done some top interviews, and we've interviewed some of the best in the world on this subject. But the information we've just heard, the fact that that's going to struggle to get into mainstream is an indictment on who we are as a people in Australia.
Yeah, it is sad, Hoodie. I reflect on all the interviews we've done, and I've got to say, I enjoyed my time with Senator Johnson. He's been a very special friend of our program, and disseminating facts and information to Australians and the world. And he's so generous with his time. He's just a beautiful human being, and you know that he's absolutely sincere and just oozes integrity. So I just hope that people that wouldn't normally get to see our interviews perhaps get to watch it. Perhaps we need to introduce him to Carl. That might be a good way forward of getting that message into the mainstream if we can't reach it as easily as others.
Yeah, well, I don't know how we get to Carl, but we'll find a way. We will find a way. We know a couple of people who may have his ear. I think if he was to at least watch this, and we could arrange an interview with Senator Johnson on his program, that helps a little. But this stuff has to get out of the bubble. This stuff has to get into the mainstream, because this is affecting millions and millions of lives around the world. And as we iterated in that interview, John, there are people dying that need help. And that help is being denied them because politicians, bureaucrats, and corporate CEOs are covering their asses
Yeah.
because they know they've done the wrong thing. They know they've been caught with their hand in the cookie jar, that he has just presented all the relevant information to prove that we were lied to, deliberately lied to. And they have to face the music. Now, I keep talking about forgiveness, and I stand by that, but forgiveness doesn't mean that you don't have to face the music. You know, you have to be accountable. If we don't hold people to account, we're enabling bad behavior to continue.
Mm. Well, sadly, more people are dying and potentially put at risk by the failure to act on this now. I mean, how many people are still getting boosters? So it's incumbent on these bureaucrats and governments to actually pause and look at the safety data, look at what's going on in the Senate in the US. In relation to these investigations. I mean, it's a clear and present danger. That's the only way you can describe what's going on here. And you know, I don't know, Hoodie. I mean, how many people have said that this is the worst atrocity in human history? But it seems that unless you see it through our lens, you don't see it.
You don't see it, and that's the thing. And you know, as Ron Johnson said, he can't blame anybody for saying, "Can we just move on?" And we don't want to hear about this because, you know, when you've been conned, you know, I think it was famous Mark Twain said it's a lot easier to con somebody than to convince them that they've been conned.
Mm.
But we're not doing this because we want to be right. Let's be honest. We're doing this because we need to make sure we don't leave anyone on the battlefield. Now, as a result of all the things that have gone on, a lot of innocent people who did the right thing because they were told to do it, and a lot of people who were coerced into doing it are now really struggling. Now, we can make our life easy by forgetting all this ever happened and going fishing. But we can't. We can't leave anyone on the battlefield. We can't leave the survivors of infected blood on the battlefield. We can't leave the survivors of the pelvic mesh scandal on the battlefield. We can't leave those kids who are suffering from all these disorders as a result of the childhood vaccination scheme and policies. We can't leave the victims of the mRNA vaccine on the battlefield. We can't. Because if we do that, how can we look at ourselves in the mirror?
Mm-hmm.
Remember, Australia, we used to say, we'll be right, we'll be right. Now it's I'll be right.
And all these other victims of social policy, bad social policy, you know, allowing children to think that they're a different sexual orientation and encouraging it.
Encouraging it.
Mad.
Encouraging it. John, encouraging it.
Yeah, that's the point.
Getting kids as young as 5 to think about their sexuality in school. That shouldn't be happening.
Mm.
And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we haven't even looked at in any great depth yet because we don't have the time to cover every issue. But you look at the child exploitation and child slavery, sexual slavery that's going on around the world. Clearly now, as a result of the Epstein files, we can see that there is a network of child sexual abuse going on around the world.
Mm.
Where do you start with that stuff?
Yeah. Where do you start?
Where do you start? I mean, we would, you know, people say to us, all you guys do is interview and talk. There's no solutions. Well, what can we do? All we can do is highlight it. So hopefully someone who can implement a solution will see it and act on it. That's all we can do.
Well, I think the solutions are probably already there, Hoodie. I think the problem is just a recognition that there's a problem to solve. I mean, these people aren't even awake to it. Very difficult.
We say in our recovery program that Michelle and I have been running for 20 years now, Recovery Road, we say this to everybody. You cannot heal a wound by saying it's not there.
Mm.
You can't.
Mm.
And we're not out there to make people more anxious. We want to give you guys hope. There is hope if we come together in truth.
Yeah.
we've got to come together in truth, not because we want to be right, because truth will allow censorship to be pulled back to allow those doctors and scientists who are already now, a lot of them have been suspended. They're all ready now to come back in and do the work needed to help those vaccine injured and the infected bloods people, all that stuff. It's all waiting to happen. And it's not happening because politicians are gutless. And they've been under the thumb of bureaucrats and under the thumb of the big corporate CEOs. And we're seeing this played out. You know, John, I got a message the other day. There was a meeting in Canada about a week ago. Barack Obama and the Canadian president, Canadian Prime Minister, and the son of George Soros.
Wow.
It was a private meeting. The Canadians are really upset about it. They're infuriated. And their Prime Minister is taking them down a rabbit hole that they're not going to be able to climb out of. And they're awake to it.
Mm.
And we'll be sending this interview to Canada as well.
Another comrade Prime Minister.
Another comrade Prime Minister who used to be the chair of the Bank of England.
There you go.
I think he was 10 years the chair of the Bank of England. Now, how long does a conspiracy theory last these days? About 3 weeks before it becomes a fact. Now, George Soros is one of the most evil men on the planet, and his son makes him look like a kindergarten kid.
Yeah.
Believe me. And Obama. When do these guys ever just get out of the way?
Well, how long until he's Kirribilli House with Albo? Can't be far off the agenda. We've already had a few grubs turn up there. So
now, Johnny, while we're on the subject of grubs, I was watching some stuff last night on the ABC's response to the One Nation win in Farah.
Yeah.
Patricia Karvelis, if she ever had any credibility prior to that broadcast, she blew it all. She blew it all. She's blaming the people who voted for One Nation for giving them credibility and validating them.
Patricia, dear, oh dear. I tell you, what do these people think? I mean, all they do is they highlight the issues. People say, "Oh, well, you know, we're not going to be told by Patricia Karvelis how to think." You know, and other people will change their mind as well. So they're not doing themselves any service. And as we said numerous times, Hoodie, I mean, how anyone on the ABC, paid by the government, can be allowed to commentate in such a manner is beyond belief.
It is beyond belief.
Leave that to the commercial entities. Leave that to us. If you want to be on the public broadcast, I'm afraid you should be providing a balanced report card.
And Patricia Karvelis, if you claim to be a journalist, I hope you watch this interview with Senator Ron Johnson and you act on it. Because any journalist who knows about this stuff, who doesn't act on it, I'm afraid is as guilty as doctors knowingly injecting people with material that they know is harmful to them without their informed consent. If you're not part of the solution, PK, you're part of the problem.
Well, get Norman Swan on, interview him and ask for his thoughts on this interview.
There's a good idea. All right, we better go, Johnny. We're going to please share this. And if you know any politicians, please share it. Don't fall for the trap of thinking, oh, you know, they won't look at it. We've got to put it out there anyway. At least we've got to say that we've done it. We've got to share it. I mean,
share it to Carl.
Share it to Carl. Get him to act on it. If he wants us to talk to him through that, if he wants us to arrange Senator Johnson, we will arrange it. We don't want any kudos for it. We just want this message out there. And, you know, the senator clearly needs our support. He's doing what he's doing for America, but in actual fact, he's doing what he's doing for the rest of the free world.
Let's set everyone a target, Hoodie. Let's ask everyone out there to make this the most shared thing we've ever put out.
Yeah.
So instead of just opening it up, everyone that opens it up, share it, and let's see where that takes us.
Absolutely, John. Absolutely. So we're going to get that out there. Now, our schedule is going to be a little disrupted over the next 2 to 3 weeks because I'm heading overseas as of tomorrow. I'll try and do some things from where I'm at and what I'm doing. And I'm going to end up in Florida. I'm hoping to talk to Dr. Kim Biss, who's on the advisory committee for vaccines in America. She's been a guest on our program. I'm hoping to catch up with her in Tampa.
Wonderful.
And get a one-on-one interview with her. But we'll keep feeding stuff now. We'll probably arrange to have some of our older programs revisited and shared, and we need to keep this message going now more than ever, because everything you've just heard from Senator Johnson is proof positive that we have to keep speaking up. So, Johnny, we'll get another Club Grubbery out as soon as we can, but please, there's enough in this program to keep it going for a month at least, if not more.
Definitely. Share.
Johnny, you've often been heard to say,
you just couldn't make this stuff up.
You couldn't make this stuff up. Stay out of the trees, everybody. Can't wait to get back to Australia and give you whatever updates I come back with. And thanks for those lovely comments about people watching the Under the Hood program on Reality Check Radio. Really appreciate your warmth and your comments. Maybe we'll send this interview to them too and see if they can promote it. So we'll see you next time on Club Grubbery. Hang in there, stay out of the trees, and bye for now.